Good evening. You know what? I'm just going to have to embrace the fact that I do my best writing at night. Okay. Like, it's just a thing. Okay. So when I do these writing sessions, child, you just go ahead and expect them at nighttime, like real late, real like super early in the morning, because that's just how I roll. Okay. So, hey, y'all, what's going on? It's me, Delores, the pastor's daughter, and I'm back, honey, with another writing session. And let me cue a little music. You know what? I kind of rewatched. Well, I didn't rewatch, but I kind of like skimmed through the video that I did last night, and I liked it with the music playing in the background too. I thought that was like I thought that. I'm um, we're going to listen to day 3 of the boot camp, y'all, because I figured that was some really good information for everybody. A lot of people ask me about my writing process, about they're interested in writing books. And so, the best way for me to advise you is this way, like listen to the experts. Um, and so I signed up for this boot camp. It was a free boot camp. So I don't feel bad about, airing the contents of the boot camp. Like I pay for a certain portion of it. So that part, I'll keep to myself, but, and that's the VIP sessions. But for these general admission sessions, they're free. So, it's just good information for me to share. And so I'm sharing it with you guys. So again, I am still making edits to Provoke to Purpose. I decided not to do From Provoke to Purpose and just do Provoke to Purpose because to me, it just fits. And judging on, like, based on the mock-up book cover that I did, it just looks better with the Provoke to Purpose. So we're just gonna stick with that, okay? So today let's just listen to the lesson from day 3 of the boot camp, and let me share with you what it was. Let me see. Okay, let me see, child. And don't forget in the chat, tell me what you're working on. Tell me what you're creating. I believe that we were created to be creators. We were created to create, and so let me know what you're creating. We can hold each other accountable. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be writing. You could be, doing some art. You could be drawing. You can be on your job. You could be doing anything. But in these writing sessions, to me, it just feels like, hey, we're just, we're all just creators creating, and so this is a great space for us to just come together and create together. It's almost like we're working together, you guys. We're not in the same room, but it feels like it. So we can hold each other accountable and just encourage each other. I'm sending you some positive creating energy, and wishing you much success on your projects and everything that you're working on. And I hope that you're doing the same for me. So let's, okay, let me put it, okay, let me see. Let me ask my regular question in the chat, child. What are you creating? I'll do it that way. Okay. And then I'll say, please share, because your girl want to know, I'm nosy. I want to know what you're working on. Okay. So let's get into day 3, y'all. Okay, so day 3 is about General Hay House Book Writers Boot Camp. It is, let me see. I know it's got a better description than this. Hold on, y'all. Day 3. Today's webinar, you'll discover how to confront and conquer your writing fears, giving you the confidence and tools to take charge of your writing journey and make real progress. Okay, like we need that, right? Child, I ain't gonna lie to you. I have my writing fears too. I still do. And I've written several things now, but I still, get a little bit of that imposter syndrome. I still get a little bit of insecurity about my, just about my work in general, like you create something, you put it out into the world, and you're just like, okay, how is it going to be received? Are they going to like it? Are they going to harshly criticize me? Are going to hate it? Whatever. So, all those things come up. And then, of course, if you're writing about your life, there's other people involved. And so you always consider those things. And, sometimes that creates a lot of fear in people and that stops them from putting out their projects. And sometimes it stops them from even starting their projects, because you're just afraid of what will happen. So, let me encourage you, just keep on going, start the project, start the memoir, start the, whatever you're working on, your poetry, whatever it is. And, once you get to these different milestones in your process, then address those issues as you come to them, but don't let those issues bombard you and stop you from even starting. So let's get into today's video and, well, today's audio. We're just going to listen to it just like we did last night. And I pray that this all blesses you and gives you a lot more guidance on your writing process and gives you a lot more confidence. And yeah, so let's go.
Who's ready for day number 3? You made it.
We're so proud of you to make it here. It really is a huge deal that you've carved this time out 3 days in a row. We said it yesterday, but you all are the finishers. You're the ones who are actually going to get that book written. So congratulations on making the commitment to yourself and actually having such a strong calling, because you really need to in order to be here with us. So thank you. So this is a fun part. So as Reed said yesterday, we're talking to you today about how to write your book, but it's really in, a lot of ways, the first section is about how to not write your book. And what I mean by that is not writing your book is a lot easier than writing your book when you have certain uncomfortable feelings that come along with writing the book. And that happens when we have just fears and resistance that sometimes we know about and other times is a little bit harder to pinpoint. So we wanted to talk to you about some of the common fears that we see operating either consciously or subconsciously with authors who want to be writing but are not writing. So that is one of the things that we deal with a lot, and we try to help you get through that. And we've got a couple different things we're going to talk to you about today on that account. But first, we're just going to walk through a few of the fears that we see. So it's interesting because today here in the VIP room, we got, a poll while you all were waiting to come on. And we saw that the number one obstacle holding all of you back, the highest ranked choice that we got was fear of not being good enough. And so that is definitely a part of a lot of these fears. So if you're feeling that, you're not alone. But the first fear is really what others are going to think. So that kind of falls in that not being good enough category. And the fact of the matter is that anything exciting and good and new that we do in life is going to get both thumbs ups and thumbs downs from people in the world. So it's not to say it's, an illegitimate fear. It probably will happen. You'll have to grow a bit of a thicker skin. We talked about this yesterday when you start submitting your book proposal to maybe the VIP folks submitting it to the contest, or any of you submitting a book proposal or a manuscript to agents and publishers. You kind of got to grow that thick skin. It's just part of the game of being a writer and really being kind of any sort of creative in our culture, that some people are going to love what you do and other people aren't. And I'll say one thing that I often tell this story is that a boss that I had when I was working at Hyperion, he used to say that when a book proposal came in and was presented at editorial meeting, if half of the editorial team absolutely loved it and half of the editorial team absolutely hated it, he knew he had a bestseller on his hands. So just to give you that idea, even a bestseller, even something as big as Let Them, which is at the top of every list right now, not everybody loves it, right? A lot of people do, but not everybody does. And that's just the way it goes. It's somehow, even in that controversy, when you get people who have a really strong opinion against you, there's a reason for that. It stirred something in them. There is something about it that got them thinking and got them feeling things, and maybe they don't know how to process what they're feeling, but it did what it's meant to do. So to start thinking about what other people think, as you're going for both people loving it and people hating it, that's a whole different mindset, right? That's a whole different way to see it. Not everybody is going to or should love it. Things that are well loved by everybody may not actually go as far as things that have that controversy around them. So keep that in mind as one antidote to that fear.
And also, I think it's good to know that everyone has it. It's no different even for Kelly and I. Like, we never know, like, when we start this, is anyone going to show up? We change it every single time, so we don't know, like, if you're going to relate to the new things that we do. And we've been doing it a long, long time, but you still don't know. So for all of you who've never written a book yet, of course, you're going to be worried even more. And every author, when they release that book, even though, like, we tell you it takes years to get it out, like, you never know till you put it out. Like you talked about Let Them. It's the biggest book probably ever in Hay House history. It's probably going to be, like, sell more than any book ever. And that's
really more than Louise?
It's probably going to sell more than Louise.
Wow, that's amazing.
I mean, we don't know yet, but it's like the sales are like double, like anything. Like the other book it's number 2 on the New York Times this week. So it's not even the biggest selling book, because Inner Excellence is the biggest selling book that I mentioned yesterday.
Wow.
And that was self-published, and it sold like 55 copies this year before A.J. Brown read it on the sidelines, and 5,000 total copies up until then, and it sold 90,000 copies last week. And here's another thing. So we've been telling you, this is self-published, and it's been out since 2020. So in 5 years, it sold 5,000 copies. It had like a bunch of 5-star reviews. I forget how many, 300 to 500 5-star reviews, but it only had sold 5,000 copies. Like, every publisher in the world's trying to get a hold of it.
I was just thinking that, like, who's agenting that book?
And, like, we're all pitching them to, like, take over the book for them.
Oh.
And all those 90,000 copies are print on demand. So all of them were print on demand. They didn't print any or anything, because they had no idea that A.J. Brown was going to sit on the sidelines and read this book.
Exactly.
Like, no one had any idea at all.
That is amazing.
And it sold more than Mel's book. Like, it didn't really sell more, but it shipped more because it's print on demand, and we're trying to catch up shipping books because we have so many people wanting to buy the Let Them theory that we can't even get enough out, because ours is a hardcover and we're printing them. We're not doing print on demand, but it's crazy. Like, and it just shows you, like,
I'm looking at his site right now. Has he I'm curious if he had tried to find a publisher for this, or if he just went straight to self-publishing. Has that been part
of it? We have no
idea.
I mean, I know one of our editors is talking with him, so I'll know a lot more, but it's like crazy. But it's everything we're teaching every single one of you. You never, ever, ever, ever know.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, so I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, this is quite something. I'll say people are asking what we're talking about. So we're talking about a book called Inner Excellence by Jim
I'll pull it
Murphy.
up and I'll share my screen.
Okay, great. And it's a book you guys are getting hot tea right now, because this is something that's happening as we speak inside the publishing business that's got everybody a Twitter, which is that, I'll say it again, that A.J. Brown, who's a football player, was reading this book on the sidelines and got caught by the cameras, and it was a self-published book. And
so
now,
can you guys see it?
It sold 90,000. No, not yet. Oh, yes, actually, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Hold on. I can't see it yet. Oh, read Tracy's screen. There we go. Yeah, there it is. So y'all can find it. It sold 90,000 copies last week.
Yeah, so he has 546 5-star reviews. It was published May 1st, 2020. So it's been out almost 5 years, and it sold, I know exactly, it sold 5,600 copies up until last week.
Oh my
gosh. And then,
that is amazing.
And that's just like all these sales, like I think it sold 90,000 last week. And it was all, that's the paperback, plus it sold Audible, plus it sold Kindle. So
amazing.
360 pages, and it was all, basically it was all print on demand. So it's no
That is amazing. Here's a little tidbit. Somebody said, I don't see it on the New York Times bestseller list. Well, that's probably because it's going to be on next week's list.
Yeah,
right?
it's going to be on Sundays, New York Times.
So there's oftentimes a delay. There's like a delay. They have to collect the sales for a week and then they print it.
And
so
we get it before anyone else. So
That's
the publishers get the list before the public gets the list.
Yeah.
I'm giving you information that no one knows.
Behind the scenes. We need to keep that between us. We're not supposed to reveal that to the world. But anyway, this is amazing. That's so fun that this is happening right when we're doing the boot camp because we can talk about it.
And this
it really
the second
does.
week it's been on. It was on last week too, but this week it's number one.
Amazing.
And so it's just, you don't know, like what's going to happen, where it's going to happen, when it's going to happen.
And with your self-published book, you don't know.
Yeah. And like, you never know what others might think again. So I was starting to listen to The Fountainhead. I don't know if you guys know that book by Ayn Rand again. And she has this preview of, it's the 25th anniversary. It was written in the 40s, but in the 60s, she wrote a preview, and she was turned down by 12 publishers before she got that book published, and it's like one of the classic books of all time.
True.
And then after she published that book, which was a huge bestseller, huge, millions sold, her next book, all the publishers turned down.
Well, she was known to not be a great. Yeah, she was known to not be a great writer, and she wrote these like massively long novels. And they had a political bent to them. There's all sorts of reasons why I think they weren't. But still, it's true. Like, that's the thing. Not everybody's going to love it. That doesn't mean you're not going to be read, 60 years later. So it's a very interesting, actually more than 60, 80 years later. It's a very interesting, thing to see. And we have a whole list of books that were turned down. I mean, Gone with the Wind is at the top of that list. And nobody wanted to publish that. Someone took it on, and look at what happened with it. So just to keep in mind, I mean, it's one of the major takeaways we would like each of you to have from this week is that wherever you start, that's not where you're going to finish. You can start self-published and work at getting the word out about your book and find yourself at the top of a bestseller list without even, getting a publisher. You could sell 1,000 copies and an editor happens to pick it up and fall in love with it and they call you. There's so many different ways that you can get to the place where you want to be. It's just sort of like holding the vision of what you want and then letting life take you on its ride. And, if we hope that you'll come out of this realizing that self-publishing is an excellent first starting spot for anybody who wants to be published by major houses. It's not an either or, it's actually a really good place to begin. So anyway,
there's so many books that were self-published, like I said before, like Deepak Chopra, Bruce Lipton, who's a Hay House author. There's Esther Hicks, who sold multi-millions of copies of her books once she came to Hay House, but she started self-publishing.
Yep.
Lots and lots of people. Mel Robbins, who I'm going to tell you the whole story tomorrow about her, but she started self-publishing, and it's a great way to get started if you can't find a publisher. Like Chicken Soup for the Soul was turned down by 34 publishers.
That's right.
It's the biggest selling nonfiction book ever, like 330 million copies. It's a series, so it's more than one book, but there you go. And Hay House turned it down, so that's one of the people. So.
And if any of those people had gotten stuck in the worry about what other people might think of them, they probably wouldn't have kept going. they would have taken that first rejection as being like confirmation they're not good enough, and then that would have been the end of it. But instead they kept going. And honestly, that's one of the other takeaways for each of you, is that the people who get to be in the place where you want to be, that you see up there on the stage, it did not happen overnight. They are the ones who just kept going. So it's sort of, what it does is it lets you figure out what level is your desire. How much do you really want it? Because it's not always a direct path. It's sometimes roundabout, because that's what life needs for us, and we need to learn that. It's just, we have to sort of surrender to it, but keep going. So that's my recommendation for each of you.
And also the Power of Now, which you mentioned, that was published by a tiny publisher in Canada. Right. And then it got picked up by New World Library in the U.S., which is still a tiny publisher.
That's right.
And it went on to sell millions and millions.
And that one was a similar, I mean, it's interesting, it's not too far away from the Inner Excellence story, which is that it was Meg Ryan, the actress, who was on the Oprah show, and Oprah asked her what books she was reading, and she started talking about the Power of Now, and that really was what put it on the map in a much bigger way here in the US and allowed it to have that next level of, you know, traction. So very close to AJ sitting on the sidelines reading it.
Yeah, and New World already was doing the books then, because there's a distributor in Canada called Barbara Dempsey that like kind of discovered the Power of Now. And she's the one that got it into the U.S. and all that. So it's a crazy, you never know. That's what we're saying. So don't worry what others might think.
That's right. That's right. That's the main takeaway. Okay. So moving into another fear that we see a lot of, and this is really one that Nancy Levin, who you'll talk to tomorrow, maybe you've seen her in one of the booths, she talks about these kinds of fears a lot, which are these sort of unconscious shadow fears that we're not even really aware of. But a lot of us have a fear of being seen. And it really, in many cases, comes honestly. It probably was that it wasn't actually safe to be seen at a certain point in your life when you were little, when you were young and vulnerable, you didn't have the protection that you needed for this or that reason. And that gets carried with you for the rest of your life if you don't consciously look at it, work with it, and learn how to live with it. I'm not even going to say let it go. I think those kinds of fears, they get baked into us very young, and they can be ancestral, they can be collective or cultural, that standing out from the crowd is a dangerous place to be. So now at the age you're at and the journey you've been on, that you really want to, in some way, be seen above the crowd. But if you have that unconscious fear that's pulling you back and saying, but no, don't do that, it's not safe, you can get caught in this push-pull that I see result with authors all the time in, I want to write a book, but I'm not writing. That's where some forms of writer's block can actually come up. It's this place where you're not sure exactly which book you want to write, and you're confused and you feel overwhelmed. All of those different experiences that writers who are not writing have oftentimes go back to a fear like, it's not safe to be seen. It won't be safe. And the way to overcome that is just to say to yourself, all I have to do is write it. And I will decide later whether I publish it. So you can kind of quell that voice in you that says this isn't safe by saying, okay, I'm not sure if I'm going to publish it, but I am going to keep going and I am going to write this book. And I've found over and over that sort of decision that you're writing it, whether or not you publish it, can pave the way for you to actually get a draft written. And there is nothing that is more indicative of getting to the finish line than having a first draft written. So it's a place where we don't even have this anywhere in our outlines to talk to you about this week. But one thing we talk about a lot is not letting yourself get caught up in editing. Because if we're editing while we're writing before we have a first draft, it is very unlikely we will get that first draft. And if you don't get a first draft down, it is very unlikely you'll be publishing a book. Okay? That's the first step. And so I absolutely love Anne Lamott. She has a beautiful book called Bird by Bird about the process of writing. She's a wonderful writer. And she always says, you have to be willing to write I'm going to say a curse word here, shitty first draft. Okay. We'll call it a crappy first draft for those of you who don't like that word. You got to be willing to write a crappy first draft. That's all you have to write. It doesn't have to be great. You just have to write that one and tell yourself it's not dangerous to write this because I might not even publish it. I'm going to decide later whether I publish it. Okay. So letting that go, that You don't have to be seen here, but you are not going to be dissuaded from producing a book, because that is what life is asking you to do.
And also, as you always say, you can have the book before the book. So you might write a book that no one ever sees, but that's the motivation to finish the real book. And lots of authors have done that I know personally, that you all read their books. There's a lot of them that had a book that never ever saw the light of day, but that was their starting point to becoming who they are today. So you can have that as well. And we always hear from people like that, oh, I wrote the book before the book, and that's what got me going, and all that sort of thing.
So to define that, the book before the book is this thing that's in you that needs to get out, but you may actually not want to put it that far out. In part due to one of the other fears we have on our list here, which is family alienation. So I find that a lot of times the book before the book is our story. It's our trauma story in a lot of cases that's been kind of just stuck in us, and we need to get it out to get the flow going for our ability to help other people. I was just talking to a friend who's working on a book, and I had tried to talk her into writing a teaching memoir, again, geared toward other people's needs. She came back and said, you know what, I'm going to write a memoir. I was like, fine, write the memoir. She wrote the whole memoir, and now she's back to saying, now I need to write the teaching memoir. I'm going to use the stories I wrote in the memoir, but I'm not publishing that memoir. And I was like, yes, it was the book before the book. It needed to come out so that the book that's meant to be there, that's meant to help other people, actually has the opportunity to flow. And this also works for fiction too. I'll tell you, there are very few novelists that are successful out there who do not have, as they say in the industry, a book in a drawer somewhere. Their first effort was just, they were figuring out not just how to craft a book, but how to actually sit down and write a book and build the stamina needed to do that. And it sometimes doesn't produce the best book. It's like that first pancake. You know, you gotta see, is the griddle hot? How long do I cook it on this side or this side? And then you create that pancake, but nobody wants to eat that pancake. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of the same with writing the book. Not everybody's gonna want to read that first book if it's really like a first pancake, which it is for a lot of very successful novelists. So don't beat yourself up if that's where you think you are right now. Just get that book out, and then wipe your hands of it, put it aside. You might come back to it. You definitely can, but then maybe turn your attention towards something else that you now can use what you learned in writing that first book to get it out.
Yeah, but there's definitely the family alienation, and also there's a bunch of people with fear of what their colleagues are going to say. Especially all the doctors, like PhDs and doctors and those kind of people, like they want to write a book to impress their colleagues, and those never ever sell. You know, that's called a dissertation. You know, or it's a book by a college press. You know, that you just you're trying to publish or perish. You know, so you can say you have a bunch of books. And like Wayne Dyer used to talk about it because he was a college professor at St. John's University, and he wrote 2 books, like that to impress the colleagues. And he says, they sold a grand total of like 500 copies. And then he wrote a book for the taxi cab drivers, Your Erroneous Zones, and sold, 50 million copies. So you can decide if you want to impress your colleagues, or you can decide if you want to reach a lot of people. It's your choice. And we run into that tons at A House, like when we have those professor people write books, because they have amazing knowledge. They just have to give it so everyone can understand, and not try to write it for 10 other PhDs to impress them how smart they are.
And I mean, that really does go back to the first fear of what other people are going to think as well, because if you aren't writing to your colleagues, they might think less of you. But you know what might be happening? They might be feeling shame for not writing the book they want to write. And they might be feeling like annoyed that you actually got there before they did. And you don't have to worry about what they're thinking. I feel like Wayne Dyer used to say this, but definitely like what they think about me is none of my business. Right? It's really about what's going on inside of them, so much more than it's going on inside of us. So, or that it's actually about us. And of course, that's like, this is a full, lifetime of therapy to get to these awakenings. But I mean, it's part of the process. And if you're writing a book, it can be your teacher and your therapist. It can be a part of that whole process that you're in. I'll tell you, I've definitely experienced that before. So, okay, a couple other things we want to talk about that we see a lot. A lot of times people are afraid that their ideas are going to be stolen. So, for example, they say, I don't want to put anything out on, any social media about anything having to do with my book because someone's going to steal my ideas. But as you've been hearing from us, getting the word out and starting to generate an audience and getting a place where you can bounce your ideas off of real people is critical in the process of gaining traction that will help your book sell. So we often say, Reed, you always say, you don't have to share your title itself because titles you cannot copyright a title. I wouldn't advise this, but any of you could go out there and write a book called The Let Them Theory if you wanted to. I would not
you can. I mean, you could. It's a little different. Like, you can use the same title, but if you did a title right now called The Let Them Theory and you tried to take that audience and you didn't have
you would get sued.
Material, it would get taken down.
Got it.
So,
okay,
we've taken down 20 books that came out already that had Let Them in
okay, got it.
title
I hear you.
because of our success.
Bad choice. Okay.
So if it's a huge bestseller, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
But in general, you can't take, you can use the same title. There's dozens and dozens of books with the same titles. But if the book is hot and successful and you're just using the title to take advantage of it,
right.
You can't do it, that's the
So
thing.
in the case we're talking about with all of you, most of you don't yet have a hot, successful title, right? Book out there. So if you were to put your title out there, someone might be able to take your title and use it, right?
Yeah.
And maybe they have a hot, successful book and then you don't want to use it anymore. So the title itself, maybe you don't have to share. But the content that's yours, that you have created, that you have even some sort of a paper trail of having created. So this is why it's nice to have something like Google Docs where you're writing or keeping different copies of your progress as you're writing your book on your computer, because all you have to do to prove content is yours is to prove that you wrote it. You do not have to copyright it right now. You do not have to send it to the Library of Congress before the book is published. You actually just need to be able to prove that you wrote it. So that's where we say it's actually not as big a risk as you could imagine to have your thoughts and ideas out there on social media, to send them out in newsletters, to talk about them on a YouTube video. What you need to be doing is testing to see if there's an audience for them. And you can't test for the audience if you're not willing to share your ideas. So Reed and I always say that it's been just, we can count on one hand how many times in our careers someone like you has had your work plagiarized and then you were no longer able to use it because someone else used it in such a big way. It just doesn't happen that often. And also, we're all synthesizing our ideas. We're all reading other people's work and we're bringing them in and we're figuring it out for ourselves, how it lands with us, and then we bring it to the page. So there is already a sharing that happens no matter what. You don't need to be as worried or as locked down as you might be right now about the book ideas that you have and not sharing them. And so I say that because that tends to be one of the things that gets in the way of a lot of people writing. They don't want to put it out there because they're afraid that they're going to be plagiarized. And we just want to say it is a very rare occurrence. It's way more likely that someone's going to duplicate your Facebook profile than that they're going to steal your content and make it into a book. So just know that, you can bring it out into the world, and we encourage you to do that.
Yeah, I can tell you today we're having a meeting. We have our editorial meeting every Thursday, and we're talking about a new author. And we approached this author to write a book. They didn't have an agent or a book proposal because they have a successful company and they have 1 million followers on Instagram. They have 700,000 followers on YouTube and 1 million followers on TikTok. And we're talking about in our meeting right now at Hay House yes, we want to do the book with this person, and we need them to start sharing everything that's going to be in the book 8 months before it comes out.
That's right.
Literally today we had that conversation. So it's not we're just telling you guys this information. we're going to sign this book at A House, and this author is going to share all the information. Like, I can't tell you the name of the author, but at the next boot camp I will, and I'll be able to use it as a story, you know, like, and another example of it is like our book Worthy, which it was by Jamie Kern Lima. She announced her book was coming out, showed the cover and everything like 9 months before it was going to come out. And she started sharing information about the book and all that. And then Jada Pinkett Smith, you know, like she came out like a few months later with her book, like the exact same title, Worthy. But hers was a memoir, and Jamie's wasn't a memoir. It was about, you know, self-esteem and, you know, that sort of thing. And Jada's came out and made the New York Times and did okay. And then Jamie's came out and was gigantic success, and all with the same title. Like, you know, and so those are examples where the same title's no problem, because the books are totally different. They just happen to have the same title. That's when it's okay, but you don't have to worry. And Jamie was freaked out and called me, and we talked through it. I said, just keep your title. Like, you'll be fine. And everyone was telling her, change the title, do this, do that. And boom, here we go. It all worked out perfect. So.
Yeah, and that's just to remind you all that our minds can get caught up with a lot of reasons why everything's going to be a problem, and it actually does not end up being the problem that we think it's going to be. And in fact, I'll just sort of round this out with the fear that's sometimes underneath all these other fears is the fear of success itself. And that can come from a lot of places, including some family legacies or loyalties that we might have to not being too successful, or some ways that being successful was somehow had a negative impact or was perceived to have a negative impact on your parents, or just that identity shift that it's going to require inside of you, or how your family might handle that if you suddenly are, you know, doing really well in a place that they might, you know, have not expected it. So it's really about doing the deep dive with yourself to uncover what might be the roots of all these different types of resistance, because really when it gets down to it, you would not have the desire to write the book if life wasn't supporting it. There's something in you that's coming up that is the impulse of the universe coming through you in some way or another, and it's asking for something. So if these are some of the fears that are standing in your way, you can need to look at them a little bit more deeply. And Reed and I would say they don't have to stop you. None of them have to stop you. So we'll leave it at that for there, and we'll move on to maybe a more fun topic.
Or a different topic.
A different topic.
I think that's important, though, all those fears, to understand them, you know. And some of you will be, we think of this later and go, oh, that's the one I have, and that's the one I have. So that's our goal, is just to help you overcome them, because they're gonna come up. There's no doubt about it, and they always come up. And even after you have books, they'll still come up. So.
Yes, it's so true. It's so true. Well, speaking of that, we are going to move on to a little spotlight for our fiction writers, because obviously a lot of what we talk about is nonfiction related, but we are super in support of all the fiction writers that we have here on the call. And as we've said, Hay House is starting to look at fiction and wanting to have a little bit, you know, more of a fiction list. And so we want to make sure you all get what you need. So there's a couple things, you know, we talked a lot about what brings a nonfiction reader to the bookshelf. So they're coming really to learn something. They're coming to learn about a solution to a problem that they already know they have. So if you're writing nonfiction, I want you to write that down. A solution to a problem the reader already knows they have. That is what your book should be. Fiction is very different. They're not coming necessarily to solve a problem, although I will say, of course, all of us have read a novel that's changed our lives or has brought us to some level of understanding of something we did not get before, or, you know, there's ways in which we can learn from fiction. But even if you're writing spiritual fiction, and so I want to speak specifically to those of you who want to be writing a book like The Alchemist or The Celestine Prophecy, the story itself has to come first. It has to come before any learning that you want the reader to have. Because the only reason that people read fiction, and this also I'm going to say is memoir as well, so those of you who are writing memoir, is because it's a ripping good story, then the pages keep turning. So that is what a fiction reader is looking for. They're looking for a protagonist that they can identify with. So if you're writing a memoir, that's you. If you're writing fiction, it could be someone who is in, sort of outwardly not at all like me, but I learned something about their vulnerability right off the bat that I can identify with. So that is one of the things that's very important when you're creating your central character, the person that is going to be followed throughout the novel. They can't be perfect. And this is something that I think is really hard for us because we kind of want that person to be perfect. But if they're perfect, the reader, we all know we're imperfect. Whether we think we are perfect or not, we know on some deep level we're imperfect. So we want to see someone we can identify with. They need to be imperfect. So we need to have a character, a protagonist that we really identify with. And we also need to have a journey with some major turning point that brings meaning. We need to feel the meaning that is universal inside the story that is very specific to that character and the world that you've created for them. So those are the two things that we need. If you're writing fiction, that's what we're looking for. A character we can identify with because we are going to be walking beside them on this journey, but mostly the journey is about entertainment. So if you're writing a novel, you might as well be writing a TV show or a movie. You're writing a piece of entertainment. It may be actually, Trojan horse, some learning in there, but it's really about the story. Okay.
Yeah, but I think also, like, if you're writing like the mass market fiction too, it needs to start quick. Like the literary fiction sometimes can go forever to get started, but the majority of the fiction that most people are reading, the quicker it starts, the better chance you have to keep them reading it. So that's, I think, a huge, like I see all these best-selling fiction books I read, they all start quick, like that's super right. Quick. And I think that's a big tip for every single one of you. Probably 95% of you are writing the kind of fiction that you want, mass market fiction rather than literary fiction, the Kelly stuff that she reads.
I do.
My wife reads it too all the time.
That's right. Christina and I.
But for most of you, you want it to start real fast so that you're really tied in right at the beginning, and then it just keeps you going throughout. You can have little lulls in the middle where you're giving lots of background and getting to know the characters, but you want to get them hooked in so they finish the book. Because just like we've been saying for nonfiction, it's all in all books, it's all about word of mouth that makes it happen. And if you finish the book, you're going to way likely to tell someone else to read it than if you don't finish it. So for nonfiction, there's something that's helping them with something, So this book helped me with something. That's why you want it. It helped me cook better. It helped me, this problem in my life. It helped me make money. It helped me find my, significant other. All those kind of things you're going to tell somebody about. So fiction, it's all about, I was entertained. Oh my God, I couldn't believe it. I didn't figure it out until the end. Or it was amazing, the adventure I went on, or the romance was, I couldn't believe it, what they were talking about. So it's all those kind of things that you want, word of mouth, and you see those best-selling books have it. Like last year when I was in Idaho at this lake, and we had all kinds of people there, like all these young girls were talking about romantasy and their favorite one, and have you read this one, and have you done this, and oh my God about that. And so anyone they didn't read, they were reading the next day, and that's what makes it work, So for all you fiction writers, that's it. You need to get them to finish the book, and that's the reason they make you turn in the whole book to decide, because they have to make sure that people are going to finish the book. So the quick start is amazing, but you got to keep them going through the whole thing.
That is absolutely right. And that's why I suggest that you do some research around what's called the 3-act structure. This is a very classic way to design a novel's flow. So you do not have to reinvent the wheel when it comes to how to put together a novel. There are a million books out there. So one that I really like is the Snowflake Method. And that book, it gives you permission to write it without an outline. So those of you who want to write without an outline, you can go and read the Snowflake Method and you'll feel great about it. There's another book called Save the Cat Writes a Novel. And Save the Cat is a brand that was originally about screenplays, but a really amazing woman who I believe is going to be at some point published by Hay House.
Yeah, she is.
Wrote, which is so exciting.
So she'll be in these workshops someday, telling you all how to write.
So exciting!
And in our memberships too.
That's right. Yes, she turned that amazing structure and way of writing a screenplay into a book for fiction writers. So that is also a great book for you, all of you.
It's called Save the Cat Writes a Novel. Because the screenplay book is called Save the Cat. And it's all about how you, like, if you have a character no one likes, you have them save the cat. And so you'll start to like them a little bit. Even if you hate them and they save the cat, they're going to be, they're going to like them. You're going to like them a little bit then. So
that's right. And I mean, maybe that even you can pull that over to writing memoir, right? So a lot of times when we're writing our memoir, we're going to be writing about difficult experiences, and maybe there are characters, parents, or other people in your life who were really bad to you. But the books that are most sticky and most get you is where you also see something, you see the parts of them where they saved the cat, but a place where they actually had good in them, or they had some part of them that you can identify with. And it actually makes it all the more juicy and all the more interesting because you can't quite put them in a box. You can feel sort of both sides of them. And so that's something to look at. And I would recommend, in addition to doing research around 3-act structure and character development, which you can totally find in books. There's so many books, online courses, all sorts of things about it. But you can also look at the books you read and the movies that you love and the plays that you love, and note how the characters were both challenging and also redeemed themselves. And that goes for even the baddies in most cases, right? We find out why they were a baddie at some point, right? So make sure, again, character development is such a crucial part. If I remember when I was editing fiction and I would receive a manuscript, if I did not feel both the action, and I knew the action is not just because you want it to be fast, which you do, but you also need that action to set up a larger conflict that we are so curious whether that's actually going to go this way or that way that we can't put the book down. So that initial scene has to show us a lot about what is the meaning of this story down the line. But we also, I would say a lot of times that the main character kept me at an arm's length. I just did not fall in love with the main character. And that was oftentimes my reason for turning down a novel when I got it on submission. So that's how important it is to really make sure that your characters, your main character especially, is someone that we can love and identify with.
Yep, and the name of the author is Jessica Brody, who wrote that.
Oh, great.
The Cat Writes a Novel, and it's applying the concepts from Save the Cat, and she made a deal with them to use the name, so that's basically.
Yes.
So.
Great. It makes sense because it works for both. And there is actually another book that I do often recommend if you're willing to read a doorstop, because it's huge, called Story by Robert McKee, which is probably the seminal book about screenwriting out there. He used to teach a class, I don't think he's teaching it anymore, but about screenwriting in LA. And he wrote this enormous book about story and how to craft story. And it is just as applicable to writers of fiction as it is to writers of screenplays, and honestly memoir as well, because again, in memoir you're carving out a very specific pathway through the million of scenes and ideas that are in your life. You can't put every single one in there. You have to choose them very carefully. And it's nice to have some background in understanding how conflicts should rise and fall to keep the reader reading, and that's what you carve out when you're writing your story. So just a thought.
That was written in 1997. And it's
oh yeah, no, that's the book. But it's huge. It's literally like a textbook. It's enormous.
Yeah, but Save the Cat Writes a Novel sells more.
It's skinny. That one's skinny too. Yeah, it's a great book. Okay, so I mean, we talked the other day about all the different genres that you might come across, but again, just to give you a sort of overview, when it comes to fiction, it's very important for you to know which genre you're writing in, because as Reed, you said, some people are writing what you called mass market books. So these are the books, we call them mass market because they come in a smaller size. This is not actually a novel, but I'm going to show you the size I'm talking about here to give you an idea. So this is actually a French dictionary. But a mass market paperback looks like this, right? It's kind of smaller. It's got, it tends to be pretty thick. We're talking like 100, 150,000 words in this book. Again, this is not a novel, but we'll pretend it is. It's Nancy Levin's journal. But literary fiction is going to be packaged more like this. So this is called a trade paperback. This is called a mass market paperback. So what we're talking about when we talk about mass market is what we are talking about. We're calling it genre fiction. So this is romance, romantasy. They don't always come in this size. They've been making them
not anymore.
Not anymore. They used
back in the day, they all would be.
They all were in that size, exactly.
But nowadays, mass market's not really a thing anymore.
Yeah, but we still use the term because we're old school, Reed. We're old school. But anyway, so you can find books that are larger formats now that are still, pretty thick, like and a lot of you, I'm sure, have read Sarah J. Maas, Court of Thorn and Roses. That is a mass market style book. It's a romantasy book, and it's, full trade paperback trim size now, but very thick. But these genres, they each have their own sort of structure. They each have their own cover designs, the fonts that they use. It is a good idea to know exactly which one you're writing so you can adhere to the norms without making your book a cookie cutter. It can't be a cookie cutter or nobody's going to want to read it. But it needs to adhere to certain norms. So making sure is it a suspense book or is it, a romance? These are two very different things, and you need to know the difference between them. So making sure that you are aware. And again, if you're writing the great American novel, that's considered to be literary fiction. It might be the great international novel for our crowd here. But that's considered generally to be literary fiction versus these more genre fictions like what we laid out the other day. So just knowing, go to the bookstore, ask a bookseller. This is, a really amazing resource that we have because they're watching these books sell every day. They know a lot about the readers. They know a lot about the genres. And if you have any questions about what genre your book is in, that's a good place to go. And we are rounding the corner here, but I will say one more thing, which is that we have talked about self-publishing when it comes to nonfiction, but self-publishing is even more of an appropriate first step if you're writing fiction. And as you said, I think yesterday or the day before, Reed, there are plenty of people who are making great money writing in a genre, writing book after book after book and self-publishing them. And the reason is that fiction readers who read in those genres, they are voracious. They read multiple books a week. And just to be able to have the volume of books that they are going to need to be reading that often, they're going to be willing to take a chance on a self-published book. And Amazon has been supporting that and bringing them to the tops of lists. And you can find them, people are finding them organically. I know this because my mother is the world's biggest romance reader, and she is reading self-published romance all the time because she's basically run out of Harlequin.
There's a few reasons for it too, just so you guys have an idea. Is number one, the self-publishing works great for fiction because the majority of the books aren't purchased as physical books. And so, they're reading so many, and they want to get them for the best price, so they'll read ebooks.
That's right.
Lots and lots of ebooks, and now it's becoming audio and ebooks, but still, so all those are downloadable. You have to buy them online. You can't buy them in a bookstore anyway. And and it's easy, like we said, the print on demand, boom, you can get it out there for anyone that wants a physical book. So your access to readers now, because of online, makes self-publishing fiction a reality.
That's right.
You know, like that's it. And when your book's on like Amazon, a lot of people will make it so the Prime readers read it for free, and then you can get discovered. So that's what we're talking about, building your audience. And you can't build your audience till you have a book, we say, with fiction. But you can get people to read your book when it's free. It's not a hard stretch to do that. And these fiction readers will read it. For nonfiction, it's harder to get them to read it when it's free, which is a weird thing. But then you don't put the value in it, and you're trying to learn something, and you never do it. Whereas if you pay for it, you're more likely to read it. So it's a crazy place that you're in. Now, a lot of the big publishers don't let their books be free and Prime, so that even makes it better for the self-publishers. So
that's right. So again, our takeaway is self-publishing is an excellent first step, and that makes it available for every one of you to be published in the next, hopefully, year.
And that's it. Also the reason, so a lot of fiction writers will stay self-published, whereas nonfiction writers won't, because when you're a fiction writer, the majority of your income comes from selling books. And
That's
so
right.
if you can make a little more from each book and still sell a lot of books, then a lot of them remain self-published, like way more than nonfiction writers. Almost zero nonfiction writers stay self-published. So.
Yep. Great. Well, with that, we are transitioning into an amazing talk that we have for all of you from a writer who was just like you. Do you want to introduce him?
Yeah, well, I mean, we can all, so
Mike Dooley.
Mike Dooley is an author at Hay House, and some of you guys might know his website and get messages from him every day, messages from the universe. He's going to tell you all about this. He has millions of people are hearing from Mike all the time. We've been working with Mike for many, many years now, and he's one of Kelly and ours favorite speakers for the writers, because he just has such a great story to tell each and every one of you, and hopefully you guys will relate to this in a big way. We know we've had Mike speak many different times, and so we know, like, usually it's a very beneficial. So watch this video. It's about 45 minutes long, and I think he'll keep you very entertained through the whole thing.
A few years ago when I did my first Hay House Writers Conference, I really could not believe that I was there to help aspiring authors discover themselves. And I was in such euphoria that the first person I called with the news, like, Mom, was my mom. I was like, Mom, I'm going to go to a Hay House Writers Conference. In total disbelief. And my mom, apparently in equal disbelief, asked the first question that could come to her mind, oh, wow, Mike, honey, who are the presenters? And I had to kind of swallow hard and say, like, Mom, I'm one of the presenters. Because coming from where I came from, with such a conventional background, where I used to think my dream of writing a book was really like escapism and borderline delusional. Like, who am I to think that I could ever have a book that somebody might like to read? Anyway, our goal here, my goal certainly, is to help give you a boost in your own confidence so that when the time comes and you're ready to tell folks you're going to a Hay House Writers Conference as a presenter, that you don't believe it. I want you to go so far and be so in awe of your life that you're going to remember back to that online boot camp you went to and like, what role did I play in the evolution of my ascent to be worthy of this place, which is, still how I sometimes feel. I have to pinch myself. So I'm going to tell you my story, with the hopes and intentions of giving you some parallels to identify with. I hope that you're able to look at my journey and at least at some parts be able to see yourself, perhaps even where you are today. To do this, I'm going to share my screen. Let's see here. How am I going to do this? Okay. Share screen. Go, baby. Oh, where did my, oh, you are sharing your screen. So, unless somebody tells me otherwise, I trust that you all can now see my screen. Maybe even with me as a picture in the side. I don't know if we can do an embed like that. But there we go. There we go. Okay, so I don't hear any objections. Where I began, as I was sharing with you, was quite conventionally. And when I say conventionally, I mean I was a non-writer. I was your college graduate who got a job in an accounting firm. And yeah, that's me in one of my more happier moments with PricewaterhouseCoopers. That's me when I had hair back in the day. I'm in the middle there, surrounded by a bevy of beauties celebrating April 15th. But inside, as the few years that I was there went on, I really felt like I was dying. I remember I was working in the Boston office, rounding out my 6th year, taking an elevator up on some freezing cold morning, and just feeling like this was killing my soul. It was not who I was. And one of the things that I did to give me some kind of hope for a different kind of life, because I couldn't see myself as anything other than an accountant. I was in my 20s, approaching my late 20s, almost 30, and I was like, this is the cards life have dealt me. To give myself some kind of hope that maybe there could be a shift, a tectonic shift. Since I had always felt, and maybe you can relate to this, that there was a book inside of me. I mean, I always thought one day I'm going to write a book. It's like, about what? I don't know. How? I don't know. Debits and credits? I hope not. But I thought there might be a book in me. And so on the weekends in Boston, when I wasn't working overtime, by the time those 6 years were done, I had written 10 pages. And I was like, okay, this is not what I was hoping for. Getting words to flow just was not happening. Who am I kidding anyway? And so I did the next thing that would give me hope. I quit cold turkey. I moved to Orlando, Florida. I was then 30 years old. I didn't know what I was going to do. All of my peers thought I was absolutely raving mad because my career had been going well, but it just wasn't who I was. Fortunately, I was single and naive. I think sometimes that's a blessing. And within very short order, with the urging and insisting of our mother, my brother, the artist, and she and myself launched Tut Enterprises, Inc. Tut eventually came to stand for Totally Unique T-shirts. This was not the life of my dreams, selling T-shirts on a sidewalk, but we learned a few things. And if I can point with my mouse right now, the shirts that had writing on them always did really well. I don't know what really well is, but to us, they did really well. If we had $100 12-hour day, we were like dancing on tables. It was slow going. But with that little prod and the fact that my mother and brother weren't writing good stuff, if I can say that, I was like, come on, we can do better. I know I'm the accountant in this trio. Let me write something. And oh my gosh, I was able to write these pithy little T-shirts that would sell not only in our little corner of the world, but we would wholesale, and we wholesaled more. We ended up having inline stores. I even self-published a book of poems, little sing-songy poems that captured like our best-selling 120 t-shirts, and they were all about the nature of reality. Your thoughts become things, your words give you wings. Picture in your mind all that you may be, and with a little time you will come to see that in the game of life your dreams will come alive by thinking of the end result as if it had arrived. I was like, oh my God, what is this creativity thing? So we started doing really well, I have to say. But by the 7th or 8th year, the trends were in the red, like badly in the red. And I did everything business-wise to turn that around. We launched a little direct selling club. We had people selling t-shirts in their living room. I started panicking again. Once again, I'm facing this major life transition. What am I going to do if we don't save this company? And so one of the things I remembered was the 10 pages that I had cobbled together back in my Price Waterhouse days. And I thought, let me get that out. Let me get that little book out. Maybe it's going to have a life after all. Well, in the ensuing 3 years, the trends did not return to green. It was harrowing. It precipitated the dark night of my soul. I'll tell you about in just a second. But I remember thinking, if I don't get this freaking stupid book out of me, I'm just going to die. And so I wrote 10 more pages. 3 years. And now I'm going double speed from what I did at Price Waterhouse. I had 20-page book. As you can see, 1989, 3,500 words. That barely qualifies as an essay. I was thrilled to hold on to it. I had to cut the paper in half because it would have been 10 pages instead of 20 pages. So I cut the page in half. I had printing on one side of the sheet only, so it looked like it was more. But I realized, like, this isn't gonna carry me into the next chapter of my life. And Mom, Andy, and I decided to liquidate our t-shirt business for literally pennies on the dollar. All of our leases, because we had some inline stores, all of our leases were serendipitously ending within the same 12-month period. And we spent a full year just completely winding down so that we would not sink with the ship, because we would have. And it felt like I was giving up on a dream. It felt like I had betrayed my knowings, if I can claim to have had any, about thoughts becoming things. Like, if you're the creator of your own reality, Mike Dooley, why has career number 2 gone up in smoke? At least I had enough money to coast a little while. But I don't mind admitting now, I literally, and now 10 years, this is 10 years later, I'm on the cusp of turning 40. It is the end of 1999. I can promise you there was no parties for 1999 in my house. And I would kneel and pray at the side of my bed, asking for guidance, fully recognizing that this was a mess of my own creation, or so it seemed to be a mess. More on that in a little while. But I remember saying, dear God, and it's the universe when I'm happy. It's God Almighty when I'm scared. I was like, dear God, I have no idea how I created this mess, but I know that I want wealth and abundance so I don't lose my home. I know that I'd like friends and laughter. I'd like to have a creative, fulfilling career, but if I'm not going to make it as an entrepreneur and I was dying in the corporate world, is there any other option? I mean, really, I saw none. In my 20-page little stapled manuscript wasn't going to be selling even one copy. And I'd like to travel internationally, because I had been doing that with Price Waterhouse. I had been doing that in the t-shirt business, but I'd been grounded for years given the trends. I was like, dear God, you figure it out. And that was another thing that served me mightily, turning over the hows and the details and the who's to the universe. Not that I wasn't going to take action. You got to put your car in gear when it comes to GPS navigation. You tell it the end result: wealth and abundance, creative, fulfilling work, friends, travel. You tell it where you want to go, and then you got to knock on doors and turn over stones. And really, at this stage, there was no thought that I could write. I mean, that's what Wayne Dyer does. That's what Louise Hay does. People who have crashed and burned in their life don't pick up a pen and start writing, do they? So this is what I did, and I've now, got some nice words to wrap around it. As I teach through the Notes from the Universe and my books, I teach that, once you've set your course, your end result, your destination, put your car in gear, and since the road you start out on will not be the road you arrive on in GPS, right? That means you're going to start out on the wrong road. And for me, now I know this is a big story, and hopefully you're further along than I was, but you're going to see how this all of a sudden came together to deliver more than my wildest dreams. So I teach to take baby steps, you need to knock on doors and turn over stones. That's my metaphor for taking baby steps down the wrong road that will lead to a better road, that will lead to the best road, that will lead to your destination. Well, I couldn't find any good door clip art on the internet, so you're going to have to settle for some gates here. This is what I did. I assessed my, at the time, sucky options, and I advocate that for people who don't know what to do next. If you knew, you wouldn't be, asking like I was asking. My options all sucked, but one of the things I could do was circulate my accountant's resume. Taking action, like you being in this boot camp, taking action breeds clarity. A clarity you could not get any other way than for those steps you took. Sometimes the clarity is green lights, and sometimes it's red lights. Well, I got clarity circulating my 10-year-old accountant's resume. Nausea, really clear, nausea. I didn't want to go back. And to my utter shock and dismay, the hiring world was equally nauseous at the prospect of my return. So fortunately, one of the things I did then, and I always advocate, you don't just knock on one door and see if anybody's home. You choose 2 or 3 of your options. Maybe they're your least sucky options, right? Choose 2 or 3. This was one of my options, and I pursued it with my heart and soul for a couple of months before I was just like, this ain't doing it. But simultaneously, we had a database of email addresses from the late 1990s. Most people didn't even know their email addresses if they had one. People who signed the guest book in our retail stores, and we would send out the t-shirt deal of the week. Nobody ever bought, but it was kind of fun playing with this internet thing. So because when we liquidated at the turn of the millennia, I had these email addresses, and it's like, I didn't want to let that go. And while this could not factor into my mind as a future business model, I wanted to be receiving motivation every day, metaphysically oriented, thoughts become things. And I thought, well, maybe you should just send your little database of 1,000 email addresses some motivation. So I started sending out these emails as Mike. Some weeks, my subscriber list grew with negative numbers, which means more people unsubscribed than subscribed. Other weeks, I'd get some bumps. But the clarity I got by taking this baby step. Now, mind you, neither of these 2 doors I knocked on was the life of my dreams. They were lesser sucky paths. The alternative was do nothing, and that's never an alternative. So I spent a whole day writing the first Monday morning motivator from Mike, cursing the whole way through. Like, why do I have to do this? I would say, Mike, just do one. Just do one. And then you never have to do it again if it's so dang awful. And I remember thinking, I bet you Dyer or Hay or Chopra is already doing this. Why would I be doing this? And if my subscribers knew where my life was at this point, they would unsubscribe immediately. It might be contagious. This guy's going down. And I just remember saying, just shut up and send one. And it was painful. I sent a little poem. That's a little poem you read there that used to be on a t-shirt. And then I gave a 3-paragraph essay afterwards. And that essay was what was torturing me. It took 8 hours to write this essay. But by the time I was done, I had written, the reason you visualize, the reason you picture things in your mind is because it creates kind of like a mold, M-O-L-D, that later the elements of time and space will rush to fill. And I was like, oh, dang, That's good. I bet you Dyer never said that. I did. Dang. And then I sent it. Talk about getting clarity for taking action, even down a sucky dirt path here. It's the dirt path that leads to the diamond mine, okay? You always start out on the wrong road. The clarity I got by the end of writing was like, oh, that was cool. It took 8 hours, 8 stupid hours, but I had the time. I was like, 8. It was cool. I was proud of what I wrote. I wrote to the best of my ability. And then people hit reply. They never hit reply when we were hawking t-shirts, but they hit reply and they said nice things. That was, and I have to look back and say, I must have been one of the forerunners of sending out spam. I mean, nobody asked for my motivation in the year 2000. They did give me their email address. So I kind of took that as like, okay, you're going to hear from me. But I just sent this out and kind of held my breath, feeling proud of myself. And Monday after Monday, I'd get emails like, oh, these are good, Mike. I'm looking forward to Mondays, Mike. I'd be like, who are you? Who are you? I love you, but who are you? Somebody said, I hope you're saving these for a book one day, Mike. It's like, oh, dang. There's something, a big green light. Now, this is not a business model. This was not making any money. This, I had no idea where it could possibly be going, but it felt good. That's so meaningful in any journey in these sacred jungles of time and space. The intuition was like, oh, so stop circulating your resume and start exploring this a little bit more. So I went to the tut.com website, which still is the website today that I use, and I fleshed it out. I started building a website around these weekly emails. I had a little online shop. I got credit card enabled. I had a few old t-shirts that never liquidated that I was selling, keychains that were selling. I mean, hardly anything sold, but at least it looked good. It looked like Tut's Adventurers Club for the adventure of life. I created also an Ask Mike forum because Mike's sending out these emails. I had to write the first few questions to Mike and so that I had something to answer. And then I was like, well, what else does a website have? Okay, I was learning about e-cards. I had all these great t-shirt designs in my brother's art and his blessing. You send an e-card to friends, you send it to 10 friends. It was the beginning of viral marketing. It's all free, but then you put an affiliate logo like Delta Airlines or Visa credit cards on the confirmation page, and you end up getting people that sign up for a credit card and you get a commission. So like I'm learning the internet as it's coming online practically, unaware of what was beneath what I was soon to be capable of doing. And I also had a community. I was like, oh, we got these people who are getting these emails. They might like to know that they're not alone. I lost track of how many people got engaged because they met somebody at the community at tut.com. I swear, the only person who couldn't get a date at tut.com back then was me. I was desperate and dateless. In that dark night of my soul, one of the things, I think I skipped this part of the story, my girlfriend ran off with her boyfriend, which is weird as it sounds. I didn't know I wasn't her boyfriend until she ran off with the real dude. And I was sick. That's how bad my life was when the calendar turned 2000. And I don't have time to go into it. You don't want those details. But I wondered if I'd ever be happy again. I couldn't eat. I was sick. I had no career. I had no hope. Nothing was what I thought it would be by the time I turned 40. It was a nightmare. It was embarrassing to be me, I can now say. It was such a difficult time. Well, since I was making no money at this venture, I thought, what do other people do that espouse on the nature of reality besides sending out free emails to make a buck? And I thought, well, they speak. So I was terrified of speaking. I thought, you ought to join Toastmasters, toastmasters.org, and deal with your fear of speaking. Because one day it might be how you pay your mortgage. Otherwise, you're going down. And so I joined Toastmasters. It was harrowing. My first 4-minute speech took about 16 hours to write. I scripted it. I was so afraid that I would go off point and lose my train of focus that I read it to the audience. That was a bad idea. My hands were shaking. The paper was rattling. My mouth was dry. My tongue was sticking to the roof. My knees were knocking. And I literally wondered if people could see my heart beating. It was pounding so hard and fast. And worse, the counter kept ringing the bell every time I said or which is what they do. She didn't know. First timers don't get that. But it was like Christmas. I couldn't be heard for the dang bell ringing, to the point that I gave her the evil eye. But coming from a guy who was petrified, I'm sure the evil eye just looked like a plea for mercy. And she stopped. Then I lost my place on the page. And then I resumed when I found it, and she resumed dinging the bell. It was a terrible experience in front of 12 people. That's how scared I was of speaking in public. But the clarity I got, I spent that weekend writing my 4-minute icebreaker. I could write a good speech. It was really good. It was about thoughts becoming things. And the audience, other than feeling perhaps pity, took it in. They heard what I said, and I didn't faint. These were milestones. This was total clarity. So I kept on giving speeches for free. And then I found out that Rotary clubs in every community meet every week and have a guest speaker come and give a free talk on what they do, services provided. And I was told I could be, call up and tell them I'm a budding motivational speaker. Can I speak to the club for 10 minutes? Well, I have a high regard for Rotarians. They have done so many good things for the community and the planet. They have changed the world for the better. But those first few groups that I've talked to, they were not nice. They were rude. The person in charge, after I started talking and was visibly shaken, would tap his wrist like, oh, Mike, thank you for coming today. We so enjoyed this talk. Just getting me off the stage. This was not an audience ready to hear that their thoughts become things, at least not from me, and it was harrowing. The only thing I could do to formulate some kind of revenge, because I can be like that, I thought, you know what, I'm going to speak to more of these clubs until I get it down, and I don't care if they don't like it. So I kept calling Rotary clubs all around Central Florida. I was on my 12th one in a year's time, and by now I'm like running out of money. I'm on my 12th Rotary Club, and it went bad. I was nervous. They were awkward. But one lady came up and said, Mike, you were talking to me today. And I was like, about time. She said, Mike, this is not your audience. And I'm like, I know. Like, who's my audience? Like, how would I find somebody who wants to know in my community about thoughts becoming? She said, Mike, have you heard of Unity Church? She said, I'm a director. Our minister's going on leave in a month, and you could be the guest speaker one Sunday. And I'm like, church? No, I'm not going to go speak in a church. And she said, oh, you don't know Unity. And I didn't. And she said, oh, they would love this message. Well, with that, it's like, I'm not going to say no to the universe. So I took up the offer. I couldn't sleep for a week prior to my gig at my first Unity Church. I prepared and memorized a 20-minute speech. I did my best to crack some jokes. And what happened next, I will never forget. These folks are into this stuff, okay? And at my every joke, they roared. At my every attempt at humor, they roared. And honestly, they laughed at things to this day. I don't know why they laughed. It took 40 minutes to deliver my 20-minute speech, during which I didn't have notes because it was memorized. I was interrupted so much by applause and laughter that it went 40 minutes long and concluded in front of 300 people. And I was so nervous with a standing ovation. I was like, oh my God. Then 300 people stood in line in Florida in the sun to thank me one at a time for coming by and being their guest speaker. And I remember then, nearly out of money, almost 2 years into this involuntary nonprofit work I was doing, I remember thinking, I was thinking, I could do this. I could really do this. So I invited myself to more Unity churches. But at the end of every church session, I would get a check, and it would bring me right back down to earth. It would be for $100. So twice a month, I speak at a Unity church on Thoughts Becoming Things, and I'd get $100. Like, Mike, first you write for free, now you speak for free. You're still delusional. It's like, all right. Then I thought, if you don't get this figured out, you need professional help, Mike. It was scary to be approaching a point where I had no money in the bank and I had a huge mortgage to pay. So I invited myself to what I learned was the Professional Body of National Speakers, NSA, Central Florida chapter. Once a month, for their membership, they do workshops delivered by a pro. And month after month, I was like mind blown as I'm dangling from a thread financially. I asked the president of Central Florida chapter if I could buy him some beer and learn how to shift and pivot from free speeches to paid speeches as a corporate motivational speaker. I bought him a whole bunch of beer. Really nice guy. We spent the whole evening talking about viral affiliate marketing. I drove home thinking, well, it's just as well, because I hate speaking. It still terrified me. 3 days later, his name was Mike. He called me. He said, Mike, you got a database of 3,000 people now. I got a database of 3,000 people. My friend has told me how to do an audio program. You sell 12 recordings at once, but you release one a month for a year as a subscription. So every month you make the next one. Every month you make the next one. He told me everything to do. Why don't we do a joint venture together? The lesson I got here was sometimes knocking on a door that you didn't even want to knock on. It was kind of sucky. Like, how do I become a professional speaker because my life is a wreck? Sometimes that door doesn't even open. But because you knocked on it, a different door that you didn't even know existed, this crazy, sexy, cool, flies open. And that's what happened when Mike invited me to do an online subscription. We'd have to fulfill cassettes or CDs, mostly cassettes back then, but we would sell it online and then we would fulfill the product, because this was before digital downloads. I couldn't believe he would do this with me. I came up with the title Infinite Possibilities, The Art of Living Your Dreams. We were just going to record interviewing each other every month. And I remember thinking, that doesn't live up to the title. And then he told me to make a real salesy a web page. And I said, I don't know if I can do that. And he reminded me of where my life was. And so I did that. And on the debut day of Infinite Possibilities, me selling to my platform, my email subscribers, which had by then evolved into Notes from the Universe, and him selling it to his subscribers, people who were in his professional corporate gig audiences, we would see what happened. On day one, without one word written or recorded, I sold $5,000 worth of Infinite Possibilities. I called him excitedly, oh my God, Eureka! One of the most important days of my whole life. How did it go for you, Mike? He hadn't sold any. When he asked about my sales and I told him $5,000, we both thought the other one was lying. But I became a believer in his big 0 day, because then he said, you keep that money, Mike, and you just do the program yourself. Which was not good news. I didn't know where to begin. He said, get a Sony Walkman mini disc player. Blah, 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 blah. So I was like, oh my God. I was not about to refund anybody's money, even though it had a money back guarantee, and I would have if they had asked, but I was going to do all I could. So guess what I did? I went to the closet and I found my little 20 pages of the time-space continuum. And while it wasn't enough to fill up an hour, it was enough to give me the beginnings of the first hour of what would be a 12-hour program. And that's where Infinite Possibilities got its origins. Every month I had a deadline to meet scripting it all out. I wrote every single word. I knew that it would have to be around, I think it was 8,000 words for me to read the script, and it'd take an hour, the promised hour recording. I did a chapter on thoughts become things, on beliefs, on intuition, on I mostly had to write it all from scratch, but that little booklet of 20 pages, 20 half pages, double spaced, was the beginning and what gave me a foundation of what my chapters would be and my talking points would be. And every month, I remember just barely making the deadline and thinking to myself, that one sucked. But I promise I'm going to do a better job next time. And then a week later, the emails would come. This is the best one. This is my favorite. I've listened to it 5 times. I made my daughter listen to it. And I'm like, oh my God. And it happened like that every single month. And suddenly I realized, because the emails had morphed by then into daily notes from the universe, for which I had nothing to sell except old t-shirts that were, not very desirable. Now I had this audio program. And according to Harvard Business School, to this day, the ultimate business model is a free service on the internet which creates followers, likers, subscribers, Instagram, email, TikTok, and then an optional purchase from time to time for those who voluntarily want more. I was like, I stumbled, and even then I didn't know what I stumbled into, but I'm like, all of a sudden I'm telling my subscribers, hey, I'm speaking in Unity of Miami. Hey, and I'm going to be selling Infinite Possibilities. Hey, you can get the audio program now. It's like, all of a sudden I had a business model. And then I get this email from Holland that says, Mike, we love your notes, my wife and I. We already have your audio program. We're looking forward to the 4th installment because, every month it was one more chapter. Enjoying the books. And we see in your notes from the universe that you're advertising that you're out there in the world speaking. You're speaking at Unity churches, okay, for $100. So all of a sudden they found me through the notes. They have the audio program. They liked what they heard. And they see that I'm a speaker. They connected the dots and said, what would it take to have you come and speak to our Herbalife downline in Amsterdam, Holland? I'm like, oh crap. I can't go to Amsterdam. And how many people? Oh, it's about 110. I'm like, how long would I talk? Oh, at least 4 hours. It's a long way to come. I'm like, 4 hours? Who could freaking speak for 4 hours? I'll be jet lagged. They don't speak English. This is like a nightmare. But I was so desperate. I was so scared about running out of money. I called my friend who had bailed on the audio program. I said, what's my fee? And he said, well, you're a beginner, low, but it's international, so you get a premium. How cool of a gig is that? Remember I told God I wanted international travel? Holy cow. Anyway, I call him up. I send an email back. I say, hey, I'm honored and flattered. And yeah, I would love to speak, but my fee is $5,000. That's the amount I would pay to say I spoke in Amsterdam, Holland. But he said my fee ought to be about $5,000. So I relayed that to the guy. It took him a day to reply. He said, you're hired. And I'm like, oh, no. When you don't have a gig, you want a gig. When you get a gig, you don't want it, at least if you're me. So I decided to kick the tires and give my first 4-hour presentation, a workshop in my own hometown of Orlando, Florida. I told my subscribers, hey, I'm going to be speaking in Orlando. It's going to be, I think it was titled Leveraging the Universe and Engaging the Magic. For those of you who got the audio program, this is the next step. I thought, there's only going to be a few people in driving distance in Orlando. I don't have a downline. I don't have nothing. Most of my subscribers are scattered around the world. I thought it'll be a safe little audience. I think there was like almost 40 people. And that was like 36 too many. I was terrified. I remember stirring my coffee at the Hilton Lake Buena Vista, and 2 ladies ran up and like, you're Mike. Dear Mike Dooley, we get the notes. We're so excited. Last night we flew in from San Francisco. And I'm like, San Francisco? Why did you do that? I was like, the pressure to perform was excruciating. I was visibly shaken to the core for the entire 4 hours, but I wrote a good workshop. And the people were thrilled. Lots of buzz, lots of chatter. It was like, at the end of that day, I was like king of the universe. Throughout that day, I was a wreck, a visible wreck. I still get people say, I was in that first. I'm like, oh, don't tell me. So I scheduled it so that 2 weeks later I could go to Holland. I went to Holland, the same. Terrified, but it worked. They were so happy. My host, they took me to see windmills and the red light district in the immediately following my talk, because it is a tourist attraction, mind you. I got home and I was like, dear God, oops. Microsoft has identified, I don't know, if you choose enable, your computer may no longer be secure. That's okay. This is important. All right, so then I get home from having done great in Orlando, having done great in Holland. I'm like, thank you, universe. I totally get it. It's so clear now the direction I'm going. I'm just going to be invited to speak to my subscribers and live happily ever after. So I was waiting for the next email to come in and invite me somewhere. And it's London, England. London, England invited me, but the guy bailed 1 month out and didn't make a deposit to me. And it turns out to the hotel where the event was going to be. So I'm scrambling, trying to figure out what to do. I called the hotel. They said, you haven't paid yet. I said, it's not me, it's my host, but he hasn't paid me either. I was like, how can I make this happen? And I said, what was the deal? Maybe I can swing it. And we came up with a happy agreement. I hosted my own event in London, England. Now I'm like 3 for 3, Orlando, Holland, England. I'm like, I'm set for life. I was nervous. They didn't mind. It worked really great. I get home and I'm waiting for the next email. This time, weeks turned into months, turned into a half a year. And there's no email. Before the light went on in my head, like, Mike, you did London yourself. Not because you wanted to, but circumstances shifted. You did Orlando yourself. You just told Notes from the Universe subscribers where you're going. And it's like, just invite yourself and call it a world tour. Nobody cares if you have a sponsor in their city. So I went to San Francisco, LA, Geneva, Switzerland, Sydney, Australia. I was a one-man show. I was packing and shipping audio programs. I was sending out Notes from the Universe, and I was getting ready for my next gig in what would be a 24-city, spanning 2-year world tour, Infinite Possibilities, the Art of Living Your Dreams. Then, now I'm in demand. I get an email from Australia, and I think, they must have been at my Brisbane event, from Rhonda and Glenda. Dear Mike, we're coming to the United States to film a documentary on the law of attraction. We love your notes. We see you're a speaker. We have infinite possibilities on our iPods. Can we interview you in Chicago next month to be in what we are calling The Secret? And that's how I got in The Secret. Well, when you're in The Secret, things that weren't working before start working. I had sent out the manuscript of Infinite Possibilities to all of the cool publishers I knew about. I mean, even the really coolest publisher of all, I'm sure. And it was just crickets. Crickets. Nobody wanted to take my audio program that was 12 hours long, over 100,000 words, and turn it into a book until I was in The Secret. And then Simon & Schuster came calling. We did a crazy book deal. My first real book. It was basically the transcript of the audio program. And because by then I had enthusiastic subscribers of Notes from the Universe, it debuted on the New York Times bestseller list. And if I can fast forward to today, I'm now in 27 languages. And let me go back. Okay, so a couple of years after Infinite Possibilities and Leveraging the Universe came out, I had the most amazing serendipitous turn of events in my entire writing career, and that was being introduced to Reed Tracy, who introduced me to Louise Hay, and suddenly I became part of the Hay House family with a multi-book deal. I'm still part of the family, and we've got something cooking that's quite exciting for next year. So yeah, I can't tell you about that right now. They invited me to speak at all the I Can Do It events. That's a Jumbotron, by the way. That Jumbotron is of a camera that's me on the stage I'm pointing to right now. I have to say, it went to my head. Like 2,000 or 3,000 people. That was Edmonton, Canada. And then back in the day, around the same time, I crossed paths so joyfully with Hay House. I mean, really, what a shift in my entire life. Could never speak highly enough of Hay House. It's been the biggest blessing in my career. But at the time I was meeting them, as you might have surmised, this desperate and dateless guy who had been so ravaged in the year 2000 by my runaway girlfriend was becoming a little bit more popular, and I was invited to speak in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, to a Spanish language audience wearing headphones, headlined by myself and Don Miguel Ruiz, author of The Four Agreements, still a friend today. And at that event, I met this señorita who spoke not one word of English. Well, it turns out that not speaking the other's language is solid gold. Okay, just take it from me, solid gold. We got married, and as the story goes, when I thought that ship had already sailed, along comes Rebecca. This was us, just a couple of months ago in Mexico. It's like a flipping fairy tale. And then I've never stopped touring or speaking until COVID. I had actually done 4 world tours, 42 countries, everyone to a paying audience, 156 cities, many on multiple occasions. That's an actual word cloud of the actual places that I invited myself to speak at. It's like, and then of course the books, I'm working on 18 right now, number 18, and there's card decks, DVDs, video courses. I know what it's like to be in your shoes. And you wonder if you aren't kidding yourself. And should you be an author or not? Well, from my story, I hoped to impart a couple of things. One of which is to inspire you to see yourself more as just a writer, but perhaps as a facilitator, an educator, an entertainer, a teacher. And when you diversify how you see yourself, you're going to then have more opportunities to go down different paths. And I'll tell you, it was like when I was praying on my knees to God Almighty, and I said, wealth and abundance, friends and laughter, creative fulfilling work, and international travel. In that instant, divine intelligence said, I know exactly how we're going to make that happen. I see all the possible roads before you. First, you need to create a platform. So keep sending out these free emails. Or by then, it was probably start sending out these free emails. Those emails turned into the notes. Today, there's 1.2 million subscribers. I couldn't see that coming, but the universe gave me these hits of intuition, or these inner dings, as Louise Hay called them. And suddenly that piece of the puzzle came into place. But looking at that piece alone, it was nothing. There was not a career. It was not the life of my dreams. It was nothing, but it felt right. So I kept knocking on other doors. I put together the speaking, the little 4-minute speeches at Toastmasters, then Rotary, then Unity, then Downlines, and beyond. The viral marketing, that's how I sold Infinite Possibilities for the first 3 years. It was like most of the things that I did either made no money or were abject failures. But in hindsight, from where I sit today, I can look back and say, oh, that piece of the puzzle led to this, and this piece led to that. And there's this masterpiece. And I literally wonder, what role did I play in my self-doubting fumbling to have gone so far through so much fear? The great thing about being a writer, of course, is that your work will outlive you. And on behalf of the many readers in the world, and perhaps audience members in the world, or perhaps art buyers in the world, depending on what your diverging paths may be, on behalf of all of them and generations to come, congratulations and thank you for facing your own fears and holding on by whatever you can hold on to give yourself hope at least one day at a time. Because what the universe has in store for you is more than you could ever imagine. And I promise you will exceed your every expectation. And one day, no matter how timid you may be feeling today, you'll look back and say, I can't believe it happened to me so fast and so big. And even when it's playing out like for me and it was so slow, I remember telling my mom, where's the damn universe? When's this stuff start working? Unbeknownst to me, it was working all the while. And when all of a sudden you wake up and you realize you're living the life of your dreams, you think to yourself like I did, that was fast. Oh my God, I would have waited 10 lifetimes for the life I now lead. I literally, truly would. And you'll feel exactly the same. So good on you for being in this boot camp. Continue to follow those inner dings. Don't be afraid to diversify. Turn over the details to the universe. Pray and move your feet. Knock on gates and turn over stones and prepare to be astounded.
Well,
How was that, everyone?
how was that?
Love Mike?
I was watching the chat both here and in general, and everybody was so getting his humor. I just think he is such a hilariously funny person and inspiring at the same time. It's like the best combination. And he really was just like you all, maybe even a little more down in the dumps than you guys.
And most of you.
Exactly. And look where he got. So it's just, we love to have him here because he really does tell the right story that we want you all to know.
Yeah, and also just the persistence, right? Like 2 years of giving speeches to everyone who hated it. I would have never done that.
No,
I
he
didn't want to
knew.
give
He
a
was
speech
driven.
to anyone at the beginning. Like when I started, it's like, what? Why am I doing this?
Nobody
Oh my
could
God.
believe you were doing it at the beginning.
I remember my very first speech that I gave was in India. I don't even know if I've told you this
I don't
story.
think so, no.
No, I've only been to India once, and I went there. We started our office in India, and the person that runs it, Ashok, picked me up from the airport, and he said, you know, would you introduce an author for a book signing? You know, like it'd be a big honor, you know, from America, and he's like going to be one of our good new authors here in India. And, you know, will you do it? And I said, you know, that doesn't sound too bad. You know, I go, like, how many people? He goes, you know, like maybe 50. I don't know. Like, it's just a book signing. And I'm like, okay, I'll do it. And I've like never, ever given a speech ever, because really for the first 20 years I was at Hay House, like I did a lot, but no one knew who I was. Like I could work at the bookstore and I Can Do It, and not one person knew that I was like the head of the Hay House, or that I was running it for Louise, basically. And no one knew who I was. And then we did this summit, and I interviewed like some of the top authors on video for the summit. And then like we were at I'll never forget, we were like at this I Can Do It, I think it was like in Atlanta or somewhere, and someone comes up to me and goes, "You're Reed Tracy." I'm like, what? Like, how the hell do you know who I am? And they go, "Oh, I saw that video." And then like a couple weeks later, like I was at another one, and they came up to me, and more people started recognizing me. But I interviewed them, but I never had spoken. And so I was in India. We go, and then later that night, like, he goes, well, I just found out there might be a few more people, maybe like 3,000 people. And of the 3,000 people, most of them won't even speak English. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, you'd only have to speak for like 20 minutes. I go, 20 minutes? Like, what the heck? And so, like, I'm panicking. I start thinking, like, what am I going to say? And, like, thinking of all the things I heard Wayne talk about all those years, you know? Like, how am I going to fit this in? Like, what am I going to do? And so there was a guy that spoke before me, and they had this, like, saying, and if you said it, they all started clapping, right? And so, like, I would say, like, 5 lines, and then the saying, and they'd all clap. And then I'd say... And so I made it through the 20 minutes, but oh my God, like, I literally thought I was going to pass out there on the spot.
Dude, is there a recording of that anywhere?
I know, I should be. I wish so much I had it. Oh my God, like, I really do. I mean, there were so many people, like, it was crazy.
Hilarious. Was it like his whole hometown or something?
It was like, he was a guru, you know, like, he had like zillions of followers, you know, like in India to have 100,000 followers, you're not even popular.
Right.
No, like, it's like crazy, oh my God. But I just hearing him say that has reminded me of doing it. And even, it's so funny how it all goes, just like he said. It's like, you know, I've told you, like, doing these writers' workshops at the beginning when I used to do them mainly by myself and, like, show videos and, like, have a guest speaker. Like, I used to panic like I was going to run out of stuff to say.
Oh my God.
Like, it's so
No,
crazy.
now we're just like, we're missing it.
I know, now with you and me, like, we can't even say all the things we want. The time goes by, and that's 8 hours or 12.
I know, exactly. Exactly.
But that gives you, hopefully that encourages you all, because I know many people, their biggest fear is the speaking, and it's just like Mike, and like I used to do a workshop called Speak, Write, and Promote with Cheryl Richardson, and and even then, like, I was still at the beginning of my speaking, and Cheryl would say, oh, you know, just give them a speech and show them. I'm like, oh, you know, like, it's crazy. Like, it's hard at the beginning, really
It's hard for everybody at the beginning. I think that's the most important thing. Is it really is.
And the other thing really to remember is, like, so I probably saw Wayne Dyer speak live more than 100 times, for sure I did. And he said that every single talk that he ever gave, he was nervous before it. And, like, even his last tour, like a month or 2 weeks before he died, or a week before he died, I was on the tour in Australia with him. And he even was saying, like, I'm nervous, and, like, I remember, like, it's crazy. And, like, he is the greatest speaker. Like,
amazing speaker, so natural. Oh, yeah. Wow.
And
the information he had in his brain.
It's okay to be nervous. That's what I'm saying. Like, you can do better than you think, I think, most always. And people are always, like, you know, forgiving for you mostly, you know, like they let you get away with it, you get the words out, and it's great when you speak to people that understand what you're doing, so and that they really get it. So eventually you'll find your group. So
yes, exactly. And I feel like you all are finding a lot of community here, which is really cool, and supporting each other. So thanks everybody for being so supportive of each other in the comments. It's really sweet to see.
Yeah, it's great, really great. So continuing our theme of the day, I have a couple things I'm going to read to you. The first one's on writer's block, and it's from Adam Grant, and he wrote this book called Hidden Potential. And it's an amazing book. It's really good. And there you go. So it's a PRH book. Viking published it. But it's funny because when I first started, when we sold Hay House to PRH, they sent me like a welcome thing, and they sent me 3 books, like, and one of them was this book, which I hadn't read, and the other 2, like, are books that I had already read, Wager, and then Eric Larson, who I always, me and Kelly both talk about, it's amazing. And, but anyways, so they sent me the book, and I was reading, and I had it like for like almost a year before I read it. And so I just like recently I read it. It's amazing. I read the whole thing in like 2 days. It's an incredible book. It's like, he has like these insights, like the most important teacher for someone in the beginning of their education. I mean, to have a good education, an indicator that you're going to have a good education and succeed in school. And all his insights are from studies. You know,
Right.
He's a college professor at Wharton.
He does research.
It's an Ivy League business school. And he's amazing. And like, he has like 300 students every semester. And before he starts, he memorizes the name of every student, not just the name, but the face, the name, and what their background is. Because a lot of them, because he teaches in the MBA program, a lot of them already have worked and have a background. And I heard this from someone in this investment that I'm in, and this guy's like one of the head guys in this investment. He goes, unbelievable is that he called on me the first day, and he said my name and what I did, and he goes, you can probably give us insight into this. And I'm like, what? This guy's like, what the heck? And then he did it the whole semester. He called on every single secondary person at the appropriate time.
That is
and
amazing.
they could contribute.
Wow, when they could contribute.
Like, I can't even imagine that. Like, I can't remember 10 people's names, let alone 300 and what they do.
Wow.
Like, it's insane. But the most important teacher for you is to have an experienced kindergarten teacher. It makes your whole education better. Like, there's studies on this. Another thing is to have the same teacher 2 years in a row or more is a huge indicator to having a better education.
Wow.
And it's so funny because, like, he says in the book, like, he happened to have this, like, he had the same teacher like 2 or 3 years in a row. He never ever thought of it before until this study came out and indicated that. And I happened to have the same teacher 2 years in a row in 5th and 6th grade. Like, I hated it so much because just the reason why he says it benefits you is they know you so well. And so this teacher, my teacher, like, I was in 5th grade and I liked her fine and did good. In 6th grade, she basically made me teach everybody because she knew, like, I was good enough to do it and like all this, and I hated it so much. But they teach you to challenge you because they understand you, and also they know, like, if you don't do good at something, they know your strengths and weaknesses and all those sort of things. But it makes sense when he says it, but you would never think of it. That's what I love about all kinds of things like that you would never think of. And then one final thing that he says is that a bigger indicator of success is, like, for grades, like in high school, it's not your ending grade point average, it's how you improve throughout your 4 years of high school. So doing good at the end is better than doing good at the beginning.
Interesting.
And the same with college. The kids that do really good at the end usually have a more successful career than the people that do, get all A's at the beginning and have struggle at the end.
Interesting.
So I thought that was like, gee, those are just tiny insights, but I just want to share that to give a background kind of for this. And so now it all is going to apply to you guys writing your book. So the first one's on writer's block. So he had, and this is like a little like thing at the bottom of the page. I don't even know what it's called. What's it called? Like when they put something at the bottom of the page?
I mean, that's a footnote. I usually tell people don't put footnotes in your books for general readers.
Rules. only if you're Adam, you can do it. But
exactly.
This isn't like, so he's talking about, I'm going to talk about procrastination in writing. That's what he's going to talk, that's what I'm going to share next.
Yeah.
But at the bottom, he talks about writer's block. And it's just a short thing, but I just wanted to read it because I think it was so good. It's like, oh my God, I have to share with all the writers about this. And so I think I'm going to put my glasses to make sure I can read it. He says, if writing isn't your preferred mode of learning, the greatest discomfort of putting your thoughts on a page is probably writer's block. And one of the things he does is talk about Steve Martin's career as an example for procrastination in writing. So he says, as Steve Martin joked, writer's block is a fancy term made up by whiners so they can have an excuse to drink alcohol. There's a reason we don't talk about dancer's block or carpenter's block. Writer's block is actually a thinking block. You're stuck because you haven't figured out what to say. Some novelists get in the groove by typing sentences from fiction they've loved. I get my ideas churning by answering a few emails. It's like a warm-up to give me momentum. If writing becomes a regular routine, eventually words start to flow as fluidly on the page as they do out of your mouth. Psychologists have found that when people were randomly assigned to schedule daily writing sessions, their output quadrupled. And even scheduling 15 minutes a day was enough to make progress. I think you've heard that from Kelly before.
I was going to say, I was even letting y'all off the hook and saying most days a week, not every day.
And then he says, and now we have artificial intelligent chatbots to help. In preliminary experiments, randomly assigning professionals to use tools like ChatGPT and Bing boosts both the quality and quantity of their writing, especially for poor writers. By shifting effort from rough drafting to idea generating and editing. For the record, I didn't write a word of this using AI, so it's probably what an AI would tell you. So, he's very funny, but it's like, and I love that about writer's block, and the studies support, like those are all, like he doesn't ever say things he's just making up, like there's all studies supporting it. So I love that it supports a lot of what we do, but also I think it really explains writer's block, that if you get started, like I know like sometimes you'll talk about it when we have time and you say similar things, but I just
I love that.
Very well put, short and succinct.
I love that it quadruples your output if you show up every day. I mean, that is enough said, right?
That's it.
You don't have to be excited about it that day. It doesn't have to feel like what you want to do. You just have to show up and put words on the page. And so I love that. That's
so then here's the other thing that lots of people have. I'm the king of this, is procrastination. And so lots of, we all have our things that we can think of not to do the things we have to do.
Yeah,
so
totally.
I know Kelly will watch herself a good TikTok and all like read different things that I don't need to read and like anything but what you need to do. We all do it. Everyone does it. It's just to the extent that you do it. And we want you to remember, get these books written in a year. So we want to get rid of the procrastination and get you writing your 15 minutes minimum every day.
Yes.
So here's what he says. He says, if you feel that way about writing too, you're not alone. Even some of the best writers I know will do almost anything to put off writing. Procrastination is a common problem whenever you're pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone. As blogger Tim Urban describes it, your brain gets hijacked by an instant gratification monkey who picks what's easy and fun over the hard work that's needed to get something done. All you have to show is your time is profound. All you have to show for your time is a profound sense of inadequacy and idleness. You've burned your self-esteem to ashes of shame. Many people associate procrastination with laziness, but psychologists find that procrastination is not a time management problem. It's an emotion management problem. When you procrastinate, you're not avoiding effort. You're avoiding the unpleasant feelings that the activity stirs up. Sooner or later, though, you realize that you're also avoiding getting where you want to go. So I think that's like
So good. So
such
good.
a good thing.
And it fits in with what we were talking about earlier around the resistance being inside of you, around sitting down and writing and getting it done. And there are a lot of unpleasant feelings that have to be thought through and felt through, and yet it's worth it. And you wouldn't be here if you weren't meant to do it.
Yep, and the name of the book, again, someone asked, is Hidden Potential. It's an awesome book, amazing book. So
amazing.
Anyways, I think it's time to say goodbye to the general people. We look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. We're going to talk all about getting people to read your book, and that's a very important thing. And when you get it done, you want them to read it. We're going to talk about lots of different things. We're going to have some more people give you motivation about their journey. We're going to hear from some people that won the contests, and so they're just exactly like where you are. So it's those are the best people for all of you. You all want to come for that. I'm going to tell you all about how Mel Robbins got her success. She's the #1 author right now, or #2, maybe this week. But we want to get that for you. So hopefully we'll see you, all you general people, tomorrow. And all you people watching the replay, hope you watch that. Remember, you have 24 hours to watch the replay, so watch them. All you VIPs, stay here because we got good stuff to talk about for you.
All right, bye, everybody.
That was pretty good, right, you guys? Very good boot camp. Like I told y'all before, I've taken it a couple times, and I always feel inspired, motivated to keep going, and to give it my all. Sometimes when you don't really see the payoff like right away, you get a little bit discouraged, you start to doubt yourself a little bit, but it's just all part of the process. It's part of the growth. And so I just embrace it. So what you've been seeing me do now is just going through some major edits and rewrites that I've done, and I've just inserted them into the manuscript. So it's a pretty cool process, especially when I'm at the part where it's like, okay, I see the full picture, the full book. And, you could see that also in the, when you do your outline, but it's just something about actually getting to this place where you're just kind of improving it, and, you're going through your process, just making it even better. So that's where I am now in this process. So you guys, I love it. Love it, love it, love it. But I can't wait till y'all get this book in your hands, honey. This is how I feel about it is this is a book that I was born to write, just like Kelly Notaris, she wrote a book that gives advice on writing, and it's called The Book You Were Born to Write. And that's how I feel about this book. I feel this book is just so freeing. And then even reading it myself, going back and reading it, and I could just see how much I have grown and how much I have really transformed from being really angry, feeling betrayed, feeling hurt, and, not really knowing what to do, what do I do about this relationship with my father? He's still alive. So, you always just kind of question yourself. And then, how people always feel about your, about your parents. Some people feel regardless of what they do, you have to still maintain a relationship with them. You just have to deal with it. But, I'm not of that belief, honey, so this is where I am in the process. I've really come a long way, y'all. Come a long way. So I guess this is a really good stopping point. It's 2 a.m., 2:07 where I am, and I have inputted all of the edits that I wanted to make during this round, all of the revisions, and all that good stuff. So I can still see there's some like formatting and stuff I need to do, but it's cool. It's cool. Yeah, this is a good place to stop. So I guess I'm gonna let y'all go. And I pray that y'all are, that you're good, that you're still creating, working on um, your projects, and that you are making great progress. Um, just know that whatever you're feeling, you probably are just going through the process, and sometimes you just got to embrace it. When I was in the military, we used to have this little saying. We would say, like, embrace the suck, because there are going to be times that just, they suck, Like, I believe the military was one of the best decisions I ever made, but that doesn't mean that, it was all good. There were some times that I was just like, oh my God, why did I do this? I want to quit, like them days out in the field, some of those days. but, um, but yeah, like you just embrace the suck because you know that not all of the process is going to be like this. It's not all going to be difficult. That there's another side of things, and once you get past this part, like you'll start to see, you start to see some real progress. So, like I said, I want to send you some great creative energy and encourage you to keep on going, honey. Just keep on going, and you will finally see the results of your hard work and your dedication. So I'm going to go ahead and update this table of contents with those changes that I made. And let me just take a quick look at it. Okay, it's looking good, y'all. Looking good. So, all right, y'all. I love y'all. Remember, you are important to me. I need you to survive. Bye-bye for now.